Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Foundations to Fortune podcast. We're glad to have everybody who has joined us today. You can watch us on YouTube and obviously all the podcast channel stations, whatever you want to call them, all out there. But we appreciate you being here and listening to episode 3. I am thrilled to death today to have Brandon Thornberry with us, who's founder and owner of UrbanGate Capital. And I've known Brandon since, about 2000, 17, 18, somewhere around there. So a while now. Brandon is an awesome investor. And as everybody knows, this podcast, I really like to talk about people's origin story, kind of where they started, where they got their start, how they got into what they're doing, and then where they are today. Because a lot of people might maybe have went and had lunch with you, Brandon, or had coffee or something like that, and still don't know all the details. And one of the reasons I love doing this too, is I'm sure there's going to be things I learned today about you that I probably didn't even know either, even though we've known each other this long. So glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun. It's always great to chat.
Yeah. So because of that, or kind of laying out what the premise of the podcast is, so I'm going to go into some of your early days.
Okay.
When I say early, not like childhood.
Okay.
But
we'll save everybody that.
Yeah, we're going to go into. So if I remember correctly, you're from Pittsburgh.
That's right.
And you came to Nashville to go to Belmont.
Correct.
To study music business.
Yeah.
Correct? So what does music business mean exactly?
Yeah, it's really a business degree that specializes in the music industry.
Okay.
And going back to high school, I played in bands, and I always really enjoyed the business side of the music industry, even in high school. You know, I was always figuring out our merch or how we were going to record a record and how we were going to monetize things. And so I decided to go to school for that and really enjoyed it. And then after school, was a tour manager. Yeah. And really loved that job as well.
So in high school, what instruments did you play?
Guitar.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So guitar, you sing?
I did not sing. That is maybe one of my greatest fears is to be singing in front of people. So we'll avoid that.
So in high school, when you're thinking about going to college, because Belmont does have one of the top music programs in the whole country. So was Belmont a college you were targeting?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And
so how did you hear about it?
Well, it's interesting. I started at another school in Pittsburgh that claimed to have a music industry degree, but it was really just music courses and business courses. None of the professors had ever worked in the music industry. And I was there for a year and quickly realized like this was not a great fit. And I'd heard about Belmont and decided to transfer, and glad I did. Yeah. It was a great school. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I think, you see a lot of the Nashville artists, and a lot of them went to Belmont, as well. So, it's just big into, I think it's got one of the top 1 or 2 music, programs in the whole country.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So after graduating from Belmont, then you went into being a tour manager.
Yes.
So not like a manager, but the tour manager of when you guys went traveling. So what kind of band was that? Was that a country, Christian, gospel?
Mostly contemporary Christian artists.
Okay.
And I toured, most of my tour manager career was with a band called Big Daddy Weave. And they're a great group, contemporary Christian music. Absolutely loved touring with those guys. It's kind of summer camp on wheels. And you just get to know everybody really well, and you get really close. And I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. It was awesome. Yeah.
So did the majority of the band members kind of stay throughout the time you were doing?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it wasn't a lot of turnover.
No. And got really close with those guys, and really enjoyed my job. Tour managing is an interesting role because there's not really a lot of training for it. But I think it takes an interesting skill set of just being really organized and on top of things. And also with tour managing, you have to foresee what the problems might be.
Yeah.
Right. You have to kind of look out and say, okay, we're going to be there and we're going to need to be here at this time and then there at this time. And like, what could happen? What could go wrong?
Yeah.
And how do I prevent that? And, I think that skill set has come into real estate too.
So what you're saying is that maybe in the Belmont, there wasn't any classes.
There weren't any.
This is how to be a tour manager.
No, there should be. There might be now.
Yeah,
there might be now, but there was no tour management class. So
these are some of the pitfalls to look out for.
Yeah,
if we're gonna go and play here. How much about the venues did you know ahead of time? Exactly. I mean, I'm sure you knew where they were, but did you know the setups and the layouts and what they had for?
A little bit, and some of it is like, where are we going to put the tour buses?
Yeah.
Where are we going to park these things?
Yeah.
We have 3 tour buses or something. Where are we going to park them? And that's just like one little tidbit of like, okay,
right.
Where are they going to go? So it's coordinating those types of things before we get on site and anticipating issues. So this is a fun job. Yeah. I enjoyed it and got to travel a lot, and it was a good season of my life.
So a lot of times you hear about some of the artists being real divas, things like that, and they want certain bottle of water or something. Maybe they want Fiji or something or whatever. Did you have experience any of that?
Not so much with Big Daddy Wee, but with some of the other groups that we toured with. Sure, there was some. There was actually one artist who really needed to have Red Bull in their green room. And I started drinking Red Bull because it was in there and got addicted to it pretty quick and needed to wean off of that. But, you just have, things that people like on their riders and make sure that all that stuff's there, but nothing too crazy. Yeah, fortunately. Yeah.
So how many years did you do that?
I did tour management for about 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So from about 2005 to 2013. And 5 of those years I was married.
Okay.
And so that
how was that dynamic?
It can be difficult. Yeah, it can be difficult. My wife at the time was a teacher, so we were on very different schedules. She was up at 5, whereas sometimes as a tour manager I was going to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning. And when you get off the road, acclimating to each other's schedule, it can be challenging. Yeah. And then the obvious one is just being away from each other. Yeah. So, yes, that's the downside of the job.
So tell me your best experience.
Tour managing?
Being a tour manager.
So many good ones.
Well, you can share several with us. So
I would say, early on, I played guitar and tour managed with an artist, and my very first gig was in Marrakesh, Morocco, and that was phenomenal. Just traveling to a country like that and experiencing that was great.
So here's to my point of learning some things I didn't know about you. Because now I knew you were the tour manager, but I didn't know you played early on.
Most of the time I was just doing tour management.
But I didn't know you played early on. That's cool.
Playing. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Going to Morocco. Yeah.
Morocco was great. With Big Daddy Weave, we did a trip to Tanzania with World Vision. That was phenomenal. Went to some sites that World Vision was involved in, and also did a safari there. That was really cool. So, it was great.
Yeah.
Got to see the world and have some phenomenal experiences.
So you probably know the next question I'm going to ask you, right? What was the most nightmarish experience you had?
Well, probably the most nightmarish
maybe.
One was that same Morocco trip because I lost my passport.
Oh.
Yeah. And that was very stressful.
Yeah.
Fortunately, ended up locating it, but I missed my flight back to the States, and that was not fun.
Yeah.
But that same trip, that was probably one of the more amazing ones. Was also one one of the stressful ones for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, losing your passport.
Yeah.
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 Trying to get back.
Yeah. It was stressful.
I can
And
only,
as the tour manager, you're supposed to be the organized one. So when you lose your passport, it's not a good
not
look.
a good look
No.
for the rest of the
Definitely
band.
not.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. So let's talk about, that's interesting that's where you started, right?
Yeah.
Is in the music and so when you were in the music business, doing the tour managing and coming out of college, and you said, okay, I'm doing this. How long do I want to do this? Probably was going through your mind.
Yep.
And then you were probably like, okay, what am I going to do after this? And maybe what?
Yeah.
Where can I look for some additional income, revenue, whatever? So how did real estate kind of enter the picture for you?
And you're exactly right. Early on, I had met another tour manager that was maybe 60, 65. And I kind of looked out and said, do I want to be a tour manager at 60 or 65, and realized that I didn't, so that kind of really early on in that already started my thought process. Okay, what's going to be my off ramp? I was trying to grow as a tour manager and get better at that, but also knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life.
For the next 40 years or something.
And someone had mentioned that they had bought rental properties and had retired and just lived off that income. And that really, my ears perked up. And I thought, that sounds very interesting. And right out of school, I decided to buy a house in East Nashville and do what's called a house hack, which I don't think at the time was like a phrase or I'd even heard of somebody doing that. But I quickly did the math and realized I could buy this house and my mortgage was going to be $1,200 and I could rent 3 rooms at $500 a piece and literally live there for free in a house. And so that's what I did. And I bought this first house and rented it out. And that's when I caught the real estate bug. Yeah.
And so that was before you even got married and any of that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
So
yeah.
So you hit the real estate game early on.
Yeah. And that's when I started plotting, like, okay, people talk about something called like a freedom number. Mm-hmm. And I just looked out at it as okay, like what would be my monthly income goal from my investments that would give me that freedom, that time freedom, that freedom of location, freedom of who I'm going to be with, freedom of purpose, and picked a number that could support that lifestyle, and then said, okay, how many rental properties do I need to get? How many do I need to acquire to get to that freedom number?
So that freedom number, had you started maybe listening to podcasts, or did you start reading books, or where did you kind of go, hey, let me come up with this freedom number? Because at that age, a lot of people are probably not thinking, hey, let me look at a freedom number.
Yeah, right.
I just wonder if that came from
2005. I don't know if there were
there podcasts then?
But there was a book I read early on by Gary Keller, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's a big, thick, like textbook of a book, but I absolutely devoured it because it was very methodical, and it was very much like, okay, if you're going to cash flow $200 a month per rental, how many do you need of those to reach that freedom number? Yeah. And at the time in East Nashville, you could pick up houses very cheap. Yeah. I mean, we're talking $60,000 for like a duplex. Yeah. And so I was able to cash flow $500 per rental. Back then, it's hard to do that now. Yeah. But I said, hey, I want to get 20 of these and get to that freedom number as fast as possible. And it's interesting to reflect back, because when you have that clarity, you just have that like exact number and it's very specific. Yep. You're just like off to the races, And so I think it's powerful to have that very specific goal in mind, and how can we get there?
Yeah. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Though that early on you had figured that out, right? To say, okay, how many do I need? So how long before you got property number 2?
Property number 2 was 2 years. Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the challenges is when you buy your
being on the road and all that
that's
stuff
a challenge.
too.
And job was great, but I didn't make a ton of money with that gig. And when you buy your first primary, your down payment might be 3%. But when you buy your first investment property, it's going to be more like 20%. And when I realized that, I said, okay, this is going to be a little challenging. So what I did is that first house I bought, within 2 years, it had already gone up tremendously in value. And I pulled out a HELOC. I used a HELOC on my first house as the down payment for my first rental. And that's how I got into that, because money-wise, I wasn't there to be able to generate and find that capital. Yeah.
So had somebody mentioned, hey, maybe do a HELOC, or maybe your lender or loan, or when you did that first one, who was bank lender?
Man, it was a bank lender.
Yeah. I don't need to know
think
which
it was.
bank.
I think it was
curious.
Bank of America.
Really?
Or maybe it was Countrywide. I can't remember. It's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But yeah, use that that HELOC, and the my first duplex I bought from a mentor of mine. There was a guy at my church who had acquired maybe 30 rentals, and I asked him if I could grab lunch, and he was very generous with his time and his knowledge. And at the end of that conversation, he said, I'm kind of trying to wind down. Why don't you pick one of my rentals that you like? We'll take 10% off and I'll sell it to you.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was how I bought my first duplex.
So how far into the real estate, buying that first one, did you meet this gentleman that was kind of a mentor for you?
That was very early on. It was probably 12 months in.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And and then later on I bought, I think, like 3 more houses from him that he seller financed.
Wow.
To me. Yeah.
So then you learned about the seller finance game.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was really fun. I can't remember if he proposed that or I did, but I remember he really wanted a certain price for these 3 houses. Yeah. And I think I proposed, well, let's do that price, but would you, and he owed him free and clear.
Yeah.
Would you seller finance them to me? And he was pretty excited about that because it allowed him to defer taxes. And then I also remember that after we had agreed upon the terms, I was looking at some options, and I proposed to him, hey, if we went up on interest rate, would you lower the down payment? And he was also very excited about that. So we lowered the down payment to 3%, which allowed me to get into those deals with a very low amount of money. Yeah.
So early on,
Sorry, I jumped ahead.
No. I'm saying I'm catching the drift here that you were very numbers oriented.
Sure.
Early on.
Yeah,
if you had the looking at, okay, how much do I need for freedom? Then you learned about some owner financing. Okay, what does that look like? How's that done? Okay, if I give you full price, then what about this interest to make the numbers work?
Yes.
So obviously, you had got in the numbers game early to understand what you needed to do to make them work and how you needed to structure it to make it work.
Yeah. Because when you're pretty tight on funds, you have to get a little creative sometimes.
Yeah. Got into the creative financing game early.
Yeah,
I like it. So, how many properties did you own before you got married? Then, because I know you said the first property you weren't married. How many did you own before you got married?
I think I was at 3 properties before I got married. Yeah.
And so then as you were dating, you said, "Oh, by the way, got these houses and I'm going to continue buying some more. So did you have to go through some educating of that part, or did she just say, Brandon, you do your thing. I'm teaching school.
Yeah.
I'm good. And
I think she was pretty into it. There was one property early on that I was buying. I think we were still dating, and I took her by there, and she was a little freaked out by the property and the location. And why are you buying this? This is very scary of a property.
What little I know about your wife, I can see her.
But no, she's been very supportive. And I think we have a healthy dynamic. I think there's some couples who are very much, in the mix together on the business, and that works for them. And she kind of just trusts me and lets me do my thing, and trust that I'm making good decisions. So it's very rare that I'm like running a acquisition by her. It's very much like that's work, not in a bad way. I mean, we talk about things,
right?
But it's not a relationship where I'm coming home and can I get your approval on me buying this? It's just how we've functioned. Worked for us.
Oh, that's great. Sometimes it is that way. Definitely. I mean, that's way it was with Jan and I early on. I had my career, she had doing her thing, and I can relate to a lot what you said. Because I was traveling like 2.5 weeks or so, 2.5 to 3 weeks a month. Then you come home and then you're having to reintroduce yourself. And
you've got to reintegrate.
So,
Got to
I don't know if yours was like mine. I'd come home and Janet would like, hey, let's go out to dinner. And I'm like, I've been on the road eating dinner, but I'd like just a peanut butter sandwich or something,
right.
Whatever. So, it's that dynamic that you have to try to work. So I understand that.
Yeah. It can be challenging.
Yeah.
It
can be. So 3 homes in, you get married, and then how many on the residential side? How many rentals did you work your way up to?
Oh man, I probably worked up to about 50.
To 50?
Probably. Yeah, see, about 50 houses.
Here's another thing I'm learning about you. I didn't know you had that many. I was thinking in the 20s somewhere, but I didn't know you got to 50. Wow.
Yeah, that was 20 was my initial goal. And as an entrepreneur, you reach a goal and then you say, what's the next one? Where are we going
50.
next? Yeah,
wow.
50.
Were they all mainly in the East Nashville area?
East Nashville, Madison, North Nashville.
Okay.
Did a good bit in North Nashville as well. I don't think I have any houses left in North Nashville. Yeah. My single family portfolio is just kind of like East Nashville and Madison now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many single families do you still have left?
Maybe like 25.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
See,
something like that.
Another thing I learned. I didn't know you had that many left. That's cool.
I should probably go back and figure that out. That's a good question.
Yeah. And so early on, I'm sure you probably managed them all.
I did.
Did all that stuff yourself, right? And now you probably have a property manager.
It's crazy to think back. Like my first rental, I did obviously the deal finding, the acquisition, managed it myself, and I renovated it myself.
That's what I was going to just ask you.
From top to bottom. And I didn't have a lot of. I'm not like really a handy guy.
Yeah.
At my core, but I'm cheap. So YouTube was my best friend and figured out how to refinish hardwood floors and obviously paint and change outlets and light fixtures and toilets and sinks and countertops and all those things. And
now I can see why your wife said, "Nah, you just go ahead and handle it."
Yeah, she helped me on that.
Did she?
One.
Okay.
She was over there painting a little bit, a couple times, but it was good. It was good to have those, that experience, because you realize what the value is of certain things, and you also realize like I never want to do drywall again, like hang drywall. Was horrible at it, or like tile work. I was horrible. And some of these guys that do this are just, it's like an art. And it's cool seeing somebody that's really good at that and just let them do their thing. And get out of the way. But yeah, the first 3 or 4 houses I just renovated myself, and then leased them up myself and did the management myself, and learned a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're still tour and managing.
Still tour managing, so I would be on the road, and then I'd get off and get right to work. On a rental property. But I loved it. Yeah. I mean, absolutely loved it.
And so how many homes did you build up before you said, okay, I'm done
tour
managing?
That's a good question. It was that kind of target. That was that 20 rentals. Yeah. And that was fortunately right when my daughter was born.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was very early on. I think she's about 4 months old when I came off the road and started doing real estate full time. So it's good timing. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah. And then when did you move into, hey, I think I need to have somebody manage this stuff for me? How many homes was that into?
I held off way too long. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't until after I got into commercial real estate where I started to look at really value my time more and how can I get this off my plate. Yeah. It's probably only been 4 years or so since I've been totally out of really like managing. Yeah. And I still manage some of my commercial properties myself, but the multifamily is all managed by third party. I've got somebody who works for me that manages my single family. So I'm still kind of involved, but I'm not doing the leasing. I'm not really taking the maintenance calls anymore. And then some of the commercial that are more mailbox money, I manage myself. Yeah.
So that's residential.
Yeah.
Let's move into the commercial world, which is more of where I like to live, on the commercial side. And so I think that was back in about 2019 or something like that. Yeah. And I think I met you at a REN kind of multifamily group, and we started chatting, and maybe that was 18, and then 19, and then I knew you were looking at this first deal that you ended up purchasing.
Yes, just barely.
Even though I tried to talk you out of it, which probably bad on me to talk you out of the deal.
No,
but
you were you were a good sounding board. Yeah. And I don't think you really pushed me one way or the other, but you were very supportive. Yeah. And, just being a sounding board. Yeah. So, it was helpful. Yeah.
So let's talk about, because I know early on, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know early on, especially when you looked at getting into multifamily, you were kind of like, hey, I want to get in by myself. Not necessarily maybe take on investors, because the whole syndication you hear, syndication term that you hear, and there's a lot of those out there. Yeah. And I know it seemed anyway, correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
but
that's right.
It seemed like you very much wanted to kind of tackle that to yourself. Yeah. And then that's kind of what you did on that first one. Yeah. And then I know, a little later on, maybe you kind of had a little bit of a mind shift to say, hey, maybe if I want to get to where I want to get, maybe I need to do some joint ventures or something like that or whatever. Yeah. So kind of talk about the start of that and kind of that shift for you too.
Yeah, I read a book called Who Not How. That was a mind shift for me, and it really opened me up to, well, first of all, that I don't need to be necessarily the boots on the ground on everything. And I think my mindset was, I only have so much bandwidth if I'm taking on investors and I'm the main operator. I'm going to get spread really thin. And then not only would I be spread thin, but I'm not really making much money because I'm giving up a portion of this deal. And Who Not How was helpful to open me up to the opportunity that I could partner with other people, even as GPs. Other people take some of the load of operating the deal and let me really focus in on what I love doing and what I enjoy doing and what I'm good at doing, which is deal finding and then envisioning how we're going to transform this property, and really just kind of focus in on those two things. Of course, I'm the operator on some deals, but other deals, I'm more of like a KP. Other deals, maybe I'm more of like an advisor, and somebody else is the operator. And then other deals, I am, doing all those jobs. So it really opened me up to. I don't have to do it all. Right. Yeah.
So for those who may be listening and are watching this on YouTube, maybe first time, so KP, LP, GP, what are those? What do those all stand for?
Right. GP would be general partner. I think of the general partner as the main operator, the boots on the ground, person running the deal. LP is the limited partner, and that's typically the partner that's bringing the capital, more passive. KP is the key principal. That might be the person that's bringing the net worth, liquidity, and experience to the deal. So if you have like a new operator that's trying to get into a multifamily deal, most lenders are going to say, hey, you're new to this. We want you to have a key principal signing on the deal and being a part of it to bring that experience piece to the deal. And so there are some deals where I am just the KP on the deal, bringing that experience, net worth, and liquidity to the deal, and maybe some sort of advisement, kind of fly on the wall, just making sure it doesn't get off the rails. But
well, and I think what you've mentioned is great. Obviously being a broker and working with a lot of investors, one of the biggest things I try to help them with and understand is that real estate and investing, and especially into the multifamily game and all that, it's a team sport.
It is, yeah.
Very much a big-time team sport.
Even if you're not bringing on investors, it's still a team sport. Yep. Even if you're not hiring third-party management, like even if you're going to keep it in-house, you still have to have a team.
Exactly.
If you're going to build your own management company, you can't there's just not enough hours in the day to do all of it.
Yeah, because you have to have the vendors in place and all of that as well. You have to have attorney. You have to have all that.
Doing your leasing. I mean, overseeing CapEx.
Yep.
Sometimes being the on-site manager or the on-site maintenance person. Yeah, it's definitely a team sport. Any way you cut it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. So, so I know, and again, another thing, you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but I know after you bought your first, few multifamilies, then I still remember this conversation very, very clearly to this day, is you and I went to Chattanooga and went and looked at a big industrial building down there. I can't remember how many square feet that Buster Brown thing was, but anyway, it was big. And but I remember when we were having lunch, and I don't know if you remember that conversation, but you had asked me that conversation of what do you like most about commercial real estate?
Yeah.
Right. And you kind of said it's probably the money maybe on the deal, right? And I think I kind of mentioned to you, I was like, well, actually, that's not it.
Yeah.
What gets me up every day is to help those people who are getting into investing, start building a portfolio to where, they can at a certain point, kind of have enough passive income, they can kind of live a life by design.
Yeah.
But I kind of equated that to you, where I said, so Brandon, so that's kind of mine. So, the most important thing is not the money.
Yeah.
But I kind of said to you, now, for you doing multifamily, you are so good at underwriting, and you can underwrite it on a back of a napkin, where a lot of other people maybe need a lot of spreadsheets. There's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
But I'm like, kind of that game, the underwriting, expenses. You can say, okay, you know what? You can underwrite it and say, okay, this deal is for me.
Yeah.
And while you like it, it produces well for you. That industrial property that you and I went and looked at, that's what really excites you.
Yeah, and I still wish we could have made that deal work.
Yeah.
That's a whole other podcast probably about
right,
that deal.
But just the point of, okay, what excites me, the money? No, it's this. But for you, it was something like that. And this goes back to what you said, where you're like, hey, I'm good at deal finding, I'm good at this, and I'm good at the vision, right? That property, just lit you up.
Yeah, that was cool.
Lit you up, meaning the vision of what you could do with that property. I mean, that for me, that was really cool to see of, how excited you were about the possibility of that, and that it had so many possibilities, and you were just in your mind going, man, here's what we do, this and this and this and this, and it was just cool for me to sit back and listen to all the vision you had for that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
And I think to me that was just a cool experience. It was a real learning experience for me to really see that while multifamily, you can do it on the back of a napkin and it's great producing for you, but that wasn't really what excites you.
Yeah,
it was these other type properties.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. Yeah. And I really like to reflect at the end of the day, like where in my day did I have the most energy? Mm-hmm. Where was I just like in that flow state? Yeah. And oftentimes it is when I'm like at a property, especially weird commercial buildings where I can do something creative and just visioning what you could do with a building and how you could transform it, what it could be used for even creative purposes. Yeah. And that's definitely one of the things that gets me excited. Yeah.
So to that point, let's talk about a couple of the properties that you have on Dickerson. Let's talk about how you've first tell us about them, and then tell us how you've transformed them. Yeah. Because I think you're throwing a little bit of that music stuff into there. Right. But just talk about what they were when you first bought them and what you've turned them into.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind is Eastside Yards.
Right, exactly.
And that's a former junkyard. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I were driving somewhere the other day, and I was just kind of thinking about things I want to do. And I said, I'd really like to someday buy like a commercial property and a bunch of space and have like a repurposed center where like construction materials are repurposed. Yeah. And she said, you mean like a junkyard? And I said, yeah, but okay, yeah, you're right. It's a junkyard. She said, you already own a junkyard. And I said, well, it's full though. I need another one. So I just thought that was really funny because in my mind, I was romanticizing this junkyard into this repurposed center. Yeah. But Eastside Yards was sort of a junkyard. It was in somebody's family for multiple generations, full of old cars and car parts, and just in the path of progress. And it had several buildings on it, very dilapidated. Roofs were missing. Yep. It was originally a gas station. So out front it had an underground storage storage tank that used to be for the gas station, which is about as horrible you can get on like a phase one. Mm-hmm. And so it had underground storage tanks. It had random barrels of unknown material around the property. It had old cars. It had stacks of tile that the bank was worried would be asbestos. I mean, it had everything. It had the gamut.
Everything that a bank doesn't like.
Yeah, to the extent of MAPCO had it under contract at one point, and they canceled the deal because it was too environmentally scary. So when a gas station passes on a deal, you've got a hairy deal. So I couldn't get financing. Luckily, I had some 1031 money from some other sales and some lines of credit. So I pulled that together, bought it with cash, and then got right to work cleaning it up, and then got it leased up, and then took it around and got financing on the back end once it was all cleaned up and stabilized. And that property has become a really fun passion project for me. We've got a drum shop there that's done a phenomenal job transforming their building. We've got a really amazing artist there that builds sculptures out of crayons. His name's Herb Williams. You should check him out. And they're like in the Nashville airport, the Atlanta airport. So he makes these ginormous sculptures of like 500,000 crayons into really cool pieces of art. We've got another tenant there called Jawbreaker that does things, build outs for hotels, for Bonnaroo, things like that. And then another segment, we rent out spaces for music videos and photo shoots. Exactly. So it's become a really cool, just creative little, and I just love being there. It's just a fun energy.
Yeah, I see a lot of your social media there when people are shooting videos and all that stuff. And that's what I was saying, talking about, still got that music vibe going on in you.
You get a little bit of taste of that, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's neat to be able to provide that space. There's a huge need in Nashville for creative space that's relatively affordable. You know, all the commercial spaces that used to be affordable have been torn down. Nothing against that. I mean, sometimes things need to be highest and best used and taken vertical, but there's a shortage of affordable space for the creative arts, which is sad in Nashville because we need that. Right. And so I enjoy kind of filling in that gap a little bit where I can find, it's a win-win. I can provide a space that's not perfect, but it functions, and a creative tenant can get some relatively affordable rent for a commercial space.
So for a lot of the artists that come in and shoot video, or shoot their music videos and things like that, have they found you by word of mouth or from one band to another, or what?
Some
or
of
how,
it. Yeah,
how has that
some of it's
grown? Because I know that's grown quite a bit.
Yeah,
for you.
Some of it's been word of mouth, some of it's been Instagram, but there are a few platforms that are really kind of the Airbnb of this niche. Peerspace, Ave, and Gigster, and then a new one that just started. Oh man, I can't remember their name, but I just got on their platform too. That's a bummer. But there's Peerspace and Ave are probably the main two. Yeah. And most of my bookings come in through those websites. Yeah.
So do you usually have 1 a week, 2 a week?
Right now we're doing about 5 a week.
About 5 a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
5 music videos or photo shoots a week.
Well, and I know you've put in like old cars and different, and the cool things for shooting videos.
And we're building out sets. So we have like a camper, like an old vintage camper. We have this like sort of barn set. We have an auto garage shop. And then I'm doing some things with some shipping containers. So we're going to have a infinity mirror room. Just fun
have
things
these
like
been
that.
Requests from people
No.
or you just like your creativity that I just talked about?
What can we do that's weird and that people would like? Yeah.
So did you hire somebody to go, hey, let's build out this set?
No.
Or no? Or are you doing that?
So I have, some guys that work for me on my real estate, and they're great at just framing, and they work for me full time. And when we're not renovating a building, we're building a set.
Yeah, that is awesome.
It's fun. Yeah.
There's something else I didn't know, Brandon.
Right?
Yeah. From there, that is cool. So you brought up a term that, and obviously, I probably everywhere I go and speak, I bring up Brandon Thornberry's name and the term of Harry deals.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So when we're talking about Harry deals, there's a lot of people that will come and they'll say, "Hey, I want a Class B property, or I want a Class C, so I can do value add, and but maybe not quite a D." And then we get into, so you have the Class A, the B, the C, the D, and then you get into what I call the Harry deals. And I always use Brandon as the example of, not only does Brandon not mind a Harry deal, but he doesn't mind the ones with like fur coats on them,
right.
like the ones that nobody would want to take. So So you kind of brought up about that East Side Yards being kind of hairy because of, the environmental issues, and you do an environmental one, which the only thing environmental one means is you have to do environmental two.
That is
true.
true.
And then so you had to do a lot of things with that. And so, that was a very hairy deal.
Yeah.
But then on some of the multifamily, I'm surprised you'll still talk to me, because I sold you a deal in Paris that was extremely hairy. That was a multifamily deal.
A good deal.
Yeah. But the price was great.
Yeah.
And, William says it's probably end up being one of the best cash flowing deals for you. But anyway, it was hairy.
Yeah.
Right. So, so talk to me a little bit about, how you got into, maybe it's this vision thing, right, that you were talking about, that you like to say, hey, this is where we can take this.
Yeah.
Because, there's very few people that want to buy hairy deals. Well, but you're one of them.
It reminds me, we were talking about that first deal that I bought in Murfreesboro.
Yep.
So it was a 32 unit. It was direct to seller. It was seller financed. And I remember sitting in the Shoney's parking lot on the phone with you. And I said, Brian, I'm about to go have lunch with the owner and tell him I'm going to cancel this deal. And I fully intended to cancel that deal because that property was rough. And I had a mentor tell me not to buy it. And I remember doing the inspection, and I like to try to walk every unit when we're doing an inspection. This one unit I went into, the tenant said, there's a hole in my floor. And I'm thinking, okay, like a hole, Yeah. And he said, no, there's like a hole.
Yeah.
Sorry, a hole.
Yeah.
Like the size of, bigger than this table hole.
Yeah. And
he proceeded to move the couch away and show me the gaping hole in his floor that they had just put carpet over because they had needed to get to an HVAC system, so they cut the hole in the floor. And then when they were done, they just put the carpet back and told the tenant just to keep his couch
there
over the hole so he doesn't fall into it. That was this property. It was mold infested. Sewer line had issues, structural issues. I intended to go into that meeting and cancel it, and the seller, luckily, said, okay, well, you have these objections. What if I just give you money off for what, you get bids. Yeah. Go get bids for all these things, and I'll just give you the money off for the deal. And so we proceeded to just go through all the things. And in my mind, I was like, well, I was excited about this deal. Now I'm not. What dollar amount would get me back there? Yeah. And it really just came back to math of how much money do I need to get this all fixed and get me back excited. And we went through it. We came up with some rough numbers. Then I got bids for it, and they kind of lined up. He took the amount off, seller financed it to me, and we were off to the races. Yeah. And luckily, I think I've kind of brought that into other deals because like East Side Yards, super scary, can't get lending on it. And you just go through methodically, like, okay, we got to get these storage tanks out. That's pretty intimidating. But what's it going to cost? Right. Let's just figure out what it's going to cost. Yeah. So I got a bid for it. It was $25,000. And I got a bid for cleanup. And I mean, I'm making it kind of, it still can be stressful in a process. So it's not like easy, but it's just, it comes down to how much is it going to cost me to get this fixed? Yeah. And if you can figure that out and you can get the property at a good basis, a good price, that's, I think, where most of the opportunity is buying those hairy deals that other people don't want to touch because it's just, I think a confused mind says no. Yeah. And so if you're confused about something and it's intimidating and I've got all these issues with these properties and it's just too much, I'm just like done. I can't emotionally handle it. If you can just write it down, go through it methodically and get pricing, and if you can get a price reduction to offset that, then why not?
Well, I think to me, I looked at it and I've kind of looked at it and went, okay, there's that, right? Yeah. You doing the numbers, but also I think you have the vision of what this could become, right? whether it's that or even some of your, your multifamily, you have River
Hills.
Yeah, River Hills down in Chattanooga.
Yeah, that's been a
right
great
where
one.
you got that one, again at a good deal. That was, a lot of people might consider that to have been a hairy deal, right? But you've taken that and turned it into something very beautiful. That, and then I know you just purchased a couple of them that you've purchased, not multifamily, but I know you did a retail kind of retail center up in Clarksville.
Yeah,
that wasn't the most appealing looking
right.
building, but again,
yeah,
to me it's I love people have the vision of what that can become, right? And knowing you, so that didn't surprise me at all that you'd have interest in that, just because of what your vision of what you could do with it. And then I know the one you had in the Old Hickory were the foundation issues, and
yes,
I loved your videos of the gushing water coming down through
the water feature.
Yeah, the water feature in it that you bought, and
and the rooftop garden that we had growing on the roof. Yeah, that was fun too.
Well, and then the one in Clarksville, I don't know how many days it was before closing when the car ran through the building. I can't remember that. I mean, so there were some interesting experiences you've had with what I consider kind of hairy deals.
Right.
Right.
That is true. Now that you bring it up,
but
you're not wrong.
And like I say, I use the example of, because a lot of people are just so afraid of, and don't always have the vision, the mindset of, hey, this is what I could do with this property. Because I think that's where you make a lot of money on deals.
Yeah. Yeah. You make a lot of money there, and it's also a lot of fun. Yeah. I was thinking today, when I was a kid, one of my favorite things to do was build a tree house.
Yeah.
Or build a fort. And it's so much fun, and you get done with it, and you play in the tree house, but the fun was really the building of it. And I think that's kind of similar to my job.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
Once it's done, it's great.
Yeah.
But the process of transforming something is really where the joy is.
So let's talk about how many multifamily properties, how many properties overall do you own? Not even residential, not the 20 or 30.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
I know you.
I don't.
I know you own multifamily down in the Chattanooga area. Several of them. I know you have some stuff in Columbia, Clarksville.
Yep.
This area. I'm sure there's a lot of other cities I'm missing. From. But one of the things too, I was going to make mention is that I was going to kind of add to when we're talking about partners. Right? Is it seems like to me, and I don't know if you've done this on purpose, because this is something you and I've never talked about, but I know with a lot of those different deals, you're in those deals with different people. Yeah. You have different partners. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it seems like you're not into any deals. There might be like two partners in one deal, or not one deal, but you may have this partner on this deal and this deal, but then on this one and this one, you have different partners. Or it seems like there's no more than like two deals where you have the same partners.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
Has that been purposely, or has that just been as you've met people through your journey of real estate?
Yeah, that's just organically happened.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to what piece needs to be brought to whatever deal. I think back to when I bought River Hills. At the time, that was a little bit bigger than I felt comfortable taking on. And it went back to not how it's not how can I do this, but who do I know that can help me accomplish this? And so I immediately thought of somebody who had a lot of experience syndicating. Yep. And, I'd rather get into that deal and own it than not own it at all. Yep. And we partnered up, and that was great. And then other deals where I've just been the KP and somebody else is running it, or other deals where I'm running it and I'm bringing in a partner to be the financial partner, or in like the case of 303 Flats in Paris, where it was a great opportunity, but I really didn't want to be the main operator. So I partnered with Will, who's crushed it, to come in and just, I literally told him, like, I don't want to run this deal. I think it's a good opportunity, but it's going to be a lot. Like, would you be interested? And he was super excited about it.
Yeah.
He might be regretting that now. Because
last time he spoke, he wasn't.
Okay,
maybe he
good.
is now. I don't know.
No, it's been good. I mean, we got that at such a good basis that it's been great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's what pieces need to be brought. Also expectations, right? Like, you have to be very clear on what piece am I bringing? What piece are you bringing? Are you okay, Will, with me kind of like being more advisor on this, maybe help with the vision, but like you really being like the main person?
Right. Yep.
And really being clear on that early on so there's not frustration down the road.
Yeah.
And when you set those expectations up front, or like when I've been a KP, like, yeah, I'll be a KP, but just so you know, like, I'm going to be more of just like an advisor. I can't really commit to being on every Zoom call, because, you do a bunch of partnerships and all of a sudden you wake up and your entire week is just Zoom calls.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is not why I got into this business, was just to be on Zoom calls.
Right.
So crafting your ideal life for yourself and what your schedule is going to be like, what brings you joy and energy, what piece you can bring. And there's been other deals where I'm like, yeah, I could be a part of that, but I don't think I'm bringing any value here. Yeah. Like, you should probably find somebody else. I don't think I'm a good fit. I don't think I can help. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're probably running at time. We're a little over time, maybe, but
has it really been an hour?
It's been over an hour.
What?
Can you believe that?
I feel like we've been talking for 10 minutes.
I know. That's what I'm saying. So, and we could talk for several more hours here because there's some other questions we didn't get to, but I do kind of want to end, but because I know you're the founder and CEO of UrbanGate Capital, but I also know that you have you have another business.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that for a minute? Well, we still have a couple minutes.
So my other business is UrbanGate Capital, in terms of we fund deals.
Yep.
We provide short-term financing, gap financing for fix and flip loans, bridge loans on land deals, and that business is growing very quickly. And so, if anybody needs financing for a deal, also if you're looking to invest, we are continuing to grow our debt fund for UrbanGate Capital, and would love to connect. So
we'll put Brandon's all of his contact information out there, but how can they get a hold of you as well?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, just B Thornberry, and DM me there. Also, I would love to do a giveaway.
Go for it.
So I found that transitioning from single family to multifamily can be a little intimidating. In single family, you might just be kind of going off of the 1% rule for evaluating deals. And when you transition into multifamily, you need to level up and really have some sort of underwriting. And we have a one-sheet underwriting tool that I'd like to give away. Just follow UrbanGate Capital on Instagram and just DM us one sheet, and we'll send you the one sheet to help you underwrite your commercial deals.
Follow you on UrbanGate Capital.
Yep.
And then just say one sheet.
Yep.
And then
we'll send it over.
All right. That sounds great. So, but any last parting comments you want to?
Well, I will say, I do want to say that I love working with you guys, and it is very apparent that you are here to serve people, and that you're not transactional, that you're transformational with helping people transform their lives, helping people find that freedom of purpose and just living the lifestyle. So thank you. We appreciate it.
And I'll say the same for Brandon. So I know we've known each other for a long time, and I feel like we're a whole lot more relational than there is transactional, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've developed a relationship. Obviously, I've met your wife, I know your kids, things like that. We didn't even get to talk about the bus.
I know. We need another podcast to talk about the bus.
Yeah, that
Yes.
one. But the other thing I was going to say is that whenever I have anybody that asks me about, hey, I have some money, who should I invest with, or who, and I'll always give them, Brandon's name, but also who is somebody I can talk to that will shoot me straight, right? That's honest, ethical, high integrity. And I appreciate that, that when I do make a connection, I get glowing reviews back from people because, you're so kind and generous with your time because, you are busy. Yes, we didn't go through all the properties, but you have a lot of them, so you're very busy and you have, your other, your funding business and all of that too. So, but yet you'll take the time to meet with people and to walk them through and talk to them if they're just starting on a journey and that. So I greatly appreciate that. And I think that just says a lot about who you are and your character. So again, I really appreciate having you, be willing to come on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
And so appreciate it very much. And so appreciate everybody for watching and checking out this podcast and episode 3. Thanks again, Brandon. And we will see you on episode 4.